Sometimes we're just as shocked or moved or energized by the news we cover as anyone would be. But by the time we share it, our initial reaction has settled a bit. But for these stories, we want you to learn about the news at the same time we do. Welcome to another installment of
And if you don't know, now you know. Ramsey.
Q.
Did you hear about the 11-year-old girl that got handcuffed in New York?
No, this is the first time hearing of it.
All right. Let me tell you a little bit more.
Okay.
Stories from the Black Information Network. The headline: 11-year-old black girl handcuffed by cops who mistook her for an alleged thief.
Mm-hmm.
An 11-year-old black girl was handcuffed by New York deputies while walking home from school in a case of mistaken identity. On Monday, January 13th, the 11-year-old girl was walking home from school with a group of her friends when they encountered Onondaga County Sheriff's deputies. Deputies put the 11-year-old girl in handcuffs, saying that she matched the description of a person who allegedly stole a Kia and fled a traffic stop.
A car?
Saying that she matched the description of a person who allegedly stole a Kia and fled a traffic stop. Authorities told the girl that the pink jacket and camo pants that she was wearing matched the alleged car thief. At the beginning, you may have heard me say 11-year-old. The other children recorded the incident and repeatedly told deputies that they had the wrong person. However, the deputies insisted they were lying. "Girl, you gonna tell me this ain't you?" one deputy said to the handcuffed girl after showing the group a photo of the actual suspect. More deputies responded to the scene and eventually realized the 11-year-old wasn't their suspect. Duh. The handcuffed girl cried as deputies apologized for their mistake. "I'm sorry about it, but you matched the description pretty clearly," one deputy said. I have a lot I'd like to say, but I'd rather hear your response.
Okay. So, yeah, I think that threw me for a loop. I was thinking that this was like a shoplifting, or I think it was going to be like a shoplifting thing or something like that. I didn't realize it was a car. Now I get why this is a whole thing. I mean, I would have gotten, there's never a reason to put an 11-year-old in handcuffs, period. You know what I mean? But like mistaking someone for a car thief who's 11 feels, you have to suspend like basic human intelligence and be fueled purely by racism and hatred in order to execute something like that in the real world. Like you have to, like, again, suspend logic and in order to arrive. The reason is, I have a 10-year-old, right? And perhaps there's a lot of growth that can take place between age 10 and 11.
I love the grace that you show.
But where I
love the grace that you show.
Sure. But where I am is, I have a 10-year-old. He's a good way on his way to being 11, indeed. And he looks nothing like a person even remotely close to being capable of even operating a vehicle, much less getting into one, starting it, or acquiring it from someone else, a car, any of that sort of stuff, right? So I could look at a person who's just his size and developmentally where he is, because you can tell the difference between a person who's just really tiny and a child. They're still not fully developed. They don't have facial hair, whatever, right? In the case of my son, he visibly looks like he's 10 years old. I could just look at him and say, there's no way that this tiny being is capable of doing that. And then I would continue my investigation, especially if I was a police officer and that was my job. And people make these assumptions all the time. There's Q, you and I can go to restaurants, and if we so chose, neither of us have ever drank alcohol, but if we so chose, we could order a glass of wine. And there are people who they might card us just to make sure that we're old enough, right? But if either of our mothers or fathers went into those same restaurants, they likely would not be carded, because people are allowed to make judgments based on appearances. But again, you have to suspend your logic and reason in order to handcuff an 11-year-old girl for something like this. And now, one more thing I want to add here.
Please.
The last thing I'll say about this. That excuse of fitting the description of a suspicious character, or fitting the description of a suspect, has been used against me on more than one occasion. And I've shared many stories with you, and I'm not sure if I've ever shared this one, but one time, I remember I was out. Where we live in Arizona, there's a city called Tempe where Arizona State University is. And in Tempe, there's like an entertainment district. It's called Mill Avenue. And Mill Avenue is where people would go and hang out on Friday night, Saturday night. It's just a little college, little strip with little bars and...
Well, maybe it was a little strip when you attended Arizona State.
Well, relative to Vegas, it's little.
It has become a...
Yeah, no, I know it's always been big, but I'm relative to people nationally, they might be comparing it to like South Beach or wherever. But here in Phoenix, it's a big deal, or in the adjacent city in Tempe. In any event, this is where we used to hang out on the weekends. And I remember I was out there and I was fresh. I had a yellow Averex sweater, right? And it was like white at the top and it faded to yellow. And then I had some yellow Averex sweatpants with the headband, and I had my hair braided.
You was killing.
And I had the wristband all yellow. I was yellow to the floor. I looked like Lil Bow. I was outside. I was him. I looked like B2K, dog. It was crazy. It was yanking, dog. I had it out. Anyway, I remember I was with some friends, and this is where we used to go and hang out and try to meet. At the time, you meet who you meet.
You
out
don't
there.
have to soft shoot.
Yeah,
people understand.
Yeah, there's a reason I was fresh. I was trying to make new friends. Anyway, I remember one of the most embarrassing moments of my life is a police officer came up to me and singled me out. And these police are on horses. Arizona is weird. It's like that. And police would be on horseback. Police officers came up to me. There was two of them. I'm like, you right there. You freeze, stand still. And they're yelling at me off these giant horses. And I'm like, yo, what's going on? What's going on? And they're like, you just flashed a gun in one of the clubs, in the nightclub. And I was like, a gun? I don't know if you know, but like when you wearing sweatpants, they got the little elastic. So you can't even keep your wallet in there. You can't even keep a T-Mobile Sidekick in there without it making your pants sag, too far. So, I'm like, the clothes, a gun? Are you really? But I'm like, I'm too afraid. And then all the people that I was kind of hanging out with, they scattered because, it was like very intimidating. And that's a tactic. Police are supposed to do that so that they can establish dominance or whatever, right? Not picking that apart. But I was just there by myself. And when they started talking about a gun, I'm like, oh my God, they think I might have a gun. Of course I don't. I hadn't even been in any clubs, and I was just there like
and
everyone else.
If you've listened to us before, Rams is the most anti-gun person.
Yeah, I'm not a gun, not at all.
That has ever lived.
I think while we're here, I think that the only purpose of a gun is to end a life, and I don't think that's why.
You think that's true. That's not. Again, this is not your opinion. I don't even want you to marginalize it as to just being your opinion.
Yeah,
that's what they're created for.
That's it. And I don't think that that's the purpose of. That is not the nature of the deployment of this being, and the spirit that inhabits this being is not to end a life. If anything, I want to bring happiness and positivity to the world, but I just don't see that as my destiny. So guns don't make sense to me. But anyway, they thought I had a gun, which, as you know, immediately puts the fear of God in your body, because if they think that you can cause harm to them, they are justified in causing harm to you, even if they just thought it. And it's especially true if they're police.
You're black.
And you're black. Generally speaking, they could just be some white folks that got scared. But if they're police, and they get the most support, right? So immediately I'm terrified. And, they had, some more officers come up on bicycles. They had the like Cannondale bicycles, because it's that type of entertainment district everyone walks around. So they get around a little bit more easy on bikes and horseback, I suppose. They get me and they start checking me, and it's really easy to check me because I'm wearing just like loose fabric. It's Arizona, so it's not freezing cold. It's just, I just look fly, you know what I'm saying? And the clothes are like kind of loose fitting, so it's easy to tell this is just a human body. There's no hardware anywhere in here. I have a phone, I have a wallet and my keys, but outside of that, I have nothing. And it wasn't until after the fact that they said, well, the description came through that the person that they were looking for was a white male wearing a yellow shirt. Right? Now, remember, my shirt was white at the top, and it shifted to yellow.
I don't even like that you just said that.
But so I'm black.
So everybody
right?
can't see my face. I get annoyed when Ramses does this benefit of the doubt thing for people.
Well, sometimes
starting that with my shirt was white again provides bail to the obvious fact that you're not.
Right. Oh, no, that's where I was going. So, allow me to continue. I'm black. My shirt is white. The bottom portion of it that kind of overlaps where my pants are, my hips are, that part is finally yellow just because it's a transition shirt. And, I have a headband, braids. This is a very black hairstyle.
So you're very obviously not a white man with a yellow shirt is my point.
Yeah, exactly. And all of this commotion and all of this fear and this, for all intents and purposes, they did arrest me. They restricted my movements. They had me held up. I'm up against the wall. They're patting me down. Meanwhile, this is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing, and I'm talking, this is Black Information Network, so most of the people that listen to this show understand this, either because they've been through it or they know someone who's been through it. But, for those of you who've been through it like me, you know what that feeling feels like, where you're like, oh man, to all these people that don't know the story behind this moment, I look like a criminal and the police look like heroes. They got another one. And I'm the face of this moment that lives in those white people's minds for the rest of their lives. How embarrassing. I've let my people down and I didn't even do anything wrong, but here I am in this position. It's the same feeling when the police pull you out of your car and handcuff you and sit you on the curb and everybody drives by and they see you sitting on the side of the road. And the people that drive by see you and they think, aha, the police must have got them for moving drugs or doing something, whatever. And they're actively reinforcing every stereotype that exists in everybody's mind, even though you haven't done anything wrong. Right? And so, in this particular instance, which is one of many stories that have happened in my life where they've just happened to be able to detain me because they could somehow make some sort of wildly loose justification of associating me with someone who does not even remotely resemble me, but they can draw some connective tissue. You know what I mean? We call it being black and nearby. Right?
In your story, there was a description that you didn't fit.
Oh, they ignored the most obvious part of the description to detain me and embarrass me.
Imagine how much more embarrassing it had been if they showed you a picture
of the person,
of the white man with the yellow shirt.
That's what these little girls were,
and that's what this little girl went through.
Yeah, exactly.
You gonna tell me this not you? This officer is showing her a picture of another person.
She was like, I was in school. They're telling you.
You have a photo of another person showing this person who's not that person, demanding that they tell you that they're not the person in the photo, that they're clearly not. Now, we have the privilege of looking at the photos in the studio. Mm-hmm. They describe the same. So if it was just a description, I would hate it for her.
Yeah.
That these white cops handcuffed an 11-year-old.
Yeah.
I would hate it for her. But the description, she would fit perfectly. if it was just the description, except she's 11, which should make you pause a little bit, grown up officer.
Yeah, Mike.
However, they have a photograph where you don't have to use your imagination, where you don't have to read a description and try to find someone that matches it. You have a picture. And though they have the same colors on, it's clear to see that these are not the same people in these photos.
Now, I want to add something here. The story I just shared, and stories like that, they happened when I was in my adult mind. I kind of had
I know where you're going.
Some of my wits about me.
I know where you're going.
Right? And my capacity to deal with those traumas, while not entirely fleshed out, was, let's call it, more robust than what I would imagine the capacity of an 11-year-old's ability would be. So to say that this type of interaction would be more traumatic to an 11-year-old little girl, I don't think that that's an exaggeration at all. I think that this is the sort of thing that sticks with her forever. This is the sort of thing that causes her to feel like, well, the only people who have ever scared me, that have only made me feel afraid, the only people who have ever caused me harm, the only people who have ever embarrassed me, the only people who have ever made me feel like less of a human, the only people who have ever taken my voice, the only people who've ever spun a narrative and stuck to that narrative rather than listen to the truth and listen to something that is logical and linear in terms of how to arrive from this point to that point. The only people who have actively tried to pressure me into admitting to something that could not have been true is the police, and therefore I don't trust police.
Before we move on, I want you to speak on this, because this is both ironically but unsurprisingly a truth that we have to deal with. Our president-elect has openly endorsed stop and frisk. The thing that I think has most enabled law enforcement to unjustifiably single us out in instances like this. Before we move on, can you just give us all some thoughts on what we might have to look forward to as just days from now the worst president in our history will be inaugurated again?
Well, one of the things that I know, and I don't love leaning on this, but one of the things that I know is that we are a resilient people. We've been through worse. One of the things, and I don't love us going back to this, but you know, we've lived through as a people a time in this country when things were much worse. And even with stop and frisk and all this sort of stuff potentially being re-implemented or fully implemented into our society with respect to people that police feel might be up to no good, which, let's be honest, is black and brown people, and give them license to assault us. For all intents and purposes, that's what it is. Assault us and violate us in full view of all the passersby. Even if that ends up being our reality, I have to say that we have been through worse and we are resilient and we can get through this. What I can say is that the potential consequences of living through that, as far as I can imagine, are very much consistent with, you know, what I have lived through, what has caused me to feel like the police are not the good guys in my story. They're just not. There's no amount of propaganda. There's no amount of watching TV shows where the police guys go get the bad guys or whatever that will change my reality, because my formative years were spent in Compton, California with the LAPD. And the LAPD were always the bad guys all the time. That's how corrupt the LAPD were, is that a 3-year-old remembers the police beating up people and then leaving them there. And this is not a story that somebody told me. I saw it. I saw it at 4. I saw it at 7. I on my formative years, I saw this happen. And when the police are the bad guys in your story, and everyone else comes to their defense when you've seen it, they say, oh, that's just a handful. Well, no, it's not just a handful. If it was just a handful, I might have seen one and been unlucky. I saw a whole system, consistent behaviors. Oh, that's one department. Nah, that's not consistent with what I've learned. Because this has happened to my people since policing existed, since it was invented, right? This was true with the Panthers. This is why the Panthers existed in the first place. You know, this is a whole push of the civil rights movement. You know, read the letter from a Birmingham jail from Dr. King. It goes into detail about how police are kicking black people. This is in the 60s and the 50s, man. Right? And, you know, everyone comes to the defense of the police, and the police get to do whatever they want. And they only do it, from where I sit, to people that look like me. So for me, when I get older, this is what I have to look forward to.
Don't put the qualifier. It's not just from where you sit. There's data that backs what you're saying. Yeah. So you don't have to.
But even in my own reality, you know, my own experience, and before I even get to the data, because, you know, that came a little later on, I had some early teachings from my father. My father was a minister. And, you know, for those that know, that come from that tradition, you know, when you're in that position, you're not just the person who teaches the word of God. You're also the person who is kind of at the helm of the community center, the community beacon, the person who needs to organize political power and strategize. You know, a preacher in black neighborhoods and black communities around this country and throughout this country's history is more than just a person who interprets the will of God or reads the Bible to people on Sundays. A preacher is a person who helps organize, you know, black communities, and therefore, being the son of a preacher, I did get that data, but I didn't get it. You know, my earliest memories are watching the police misbehave and hurt people crying and bleeding blood. Like, imagine seeing that so young. You know, you get older and you see movies, you're like, oh, that's not real. I know that because I've seen actual real blood come out of a person's body before. I've seen the pink skin underneath their brown flesh, and their hair is with the skin part. I seen it happen because it got hit in the head.
I want to say the reason why I push back on the from where you sit is it gives people the impression that that's just your point of view, and that's not the truth.
No, I see what you mean.
Right? We live in a very litigious country. Mm-hmm. People sue for everything. Yeah. And we also live in a country that really, really, really wants to prove it's not racist. So if there were instances of these things happening to white people, we would see and hear about it all the time. Yeah. And we never do because it never happens. Yeah. Not just from your point of view, but data. But period. Yeah. Right? I want to read this quote from the mother of this 11-year-old. She no longer wants to walk to and from school anymore. That was the only freedom she had, and now it's gone, the mother said. She said, and I quote, I can't make sense of it. I couldn't even finish watching the video. Even if it wasn't my child, I wouldn't be able to finish watching the video because that's not how you handle children.
That's the trauma that I'm talking about.
And that trauma lasts forever.
Yeah, that's the trauma. I wanna share another thing. So we talked about stop and frisk, right? And the trauma that it can impose on communities and strain the relationships, not just between black people and the police, but black people and everybody else who's not getting stopped and frisked. Strains on both sides, because the people that are observing it, it's reinforcing stereotypes. Oh, they're stopping black people because the black people are up to no good. And for black people, it's like, you guys don't get treated like this, and you look down on me, and I've done nothing wrong. I played this game by your rules, and you voted for this, and you reinforce this, and so it strains communities beyond just black people and the police. But how trauma works, you know, I got bit by a dog when I was 3 years old. Never been comfortable with dogs ever since then. Same exact thing that happens with the police. Nah, I already know how y'all get down. Bring a dog around me. The dog that bit me, I was petting him in front of a fireplace at a lady named Melody's house. I had a fantastic memory when I was 3 years old. Say what you will about me, but I was there and I remember it. I still got the scar on my left arm. I got a heart tattooed over it and it's broken. That dog named Josh bit me in my 3-year-old arm and I saw my skin hanging off and blood going on the wood floor. And my dad came out and picked me up and he took me to go get fixed. And he wrecked that dog. Same dog bit my brother on the forehead. If you see my brother Raka, Iris Science of the Dilated Peoples, he's got a scar on his forehead. Same dog bit him. My dad had enough that day. That trauma stayed with me. I'll be 43 years old this year. That's 40 years worth of trauma. Bring a dog around me right now and watch how I act. Now, I'm not scared because I'm in my man body. I'm physically bigger than dogs now. But I am not easy around a dog. I do not want to be Q. You got a dog, you can tell him.
Well, I don't even have to talk about my dog. You wouldn't let once upon a time the love of your life have a dog around you. Like so we don't have to talk about your brother. we bend rules
my
for
little
those
sister,
who we romantically fall in love with. A lot of us. I know y'all listening. We bend rules for those that we fall in love with, not that one. So
that's trauma. That's how it works.
Consider all of these things when judging the way that Black people respond to and interact with police.
Yeah.
Because we did not choose to feel this way about law enforcement. Life taught us. And if you don't know, now you know.
This has been a production of the Black Information Network. Today's show was produced by Chris Thompson. Have some thoughts you'd like to share? Use the red microphone talkback feature on the iHeartRadio app. While you're there, be sure to hit subscribe and download all of our episodes. I am your host, Ramses Ja, on all social media.
I am Q Ward on all social media as well.
And join us tomorrow as we share our news with our voice from our perspective right here on the Black Information Network Daily Podcast.